Rainbow Six Siege can be a very intimidating game to a new audience. And with nearly 70 operators in the game currently, it can be very hard to tell which operators you should be playing. And for a newer eye, it's going to be very hard to tell which operators that you should get. Well, I'm happy you clicked on this video, because I'm going to teach you about the beginner-friendly operators that you should consider picking up. I'm going to talk about the operators that, if you are a newer player, you should consider picking up. But with that said, let's go ahead and talk about the operators. The first operator we're going to talk about is Jager. He's one of the original Pathfinder operators, and you can find him as little as 1,000 renown or by completing a simple challenge for him. Jager comes with a unique gadget known as the ADS device, and he comes with secondary gadgets of bulletproof cameras and the new observation blockers. More on his secondary gadgets in a little bit, but for his primary gadget, the ADS. He can hold up to 3 of them at a time, and its unique ability is the fact that it can catch any projectiles that the attackers can throw that is not a Gorilla Track Stinkers or a Capital Bolt. I specifically mentioned Capital and Grellic because their gadgets are technically not projectiles, even though while Mai's gadget can technically catch them, Jaeger's cannot. But back to the ADS. It can catch any projectile that is a primary or secondary gadget. So for secondary gadgets, it could be a frag grenade, flashbang, smoke grenade, or a secondary Gone 6 device. And again, it can also catch some of the primary gadgets, that being any of the launchers you can find on Graham, Ash, and Sophia, H's Selma's, Callie's launcher, and technically any EMP device. However, the EMPs could just impact the wall and just disable the ADS altogether. After a projectile is caught by the ADSs, they will go on a cooldown of 10 seconds. After that, it will be reloaded. You technically have an unlimited amount of these, but considering the fact that the rounds typically last about 3 minutes, you're probably not going to use all of them. The main uses for the ADSs is to protect any shield that a defender is playing behind, or if you're playing any power position that you need to hold down the ground. If you're holding Bakery on Cafe Dostoevsky, then potentially placing the ADS behind the bakery table will be a good place to place it, because someone is typically going to be playing behind here to make sure the attackers don't actually get into the bakery. But I personally like placing it here, because one, if they try to nade the person behind the table, then it will be caught sooner, so it kind of wastes a little bit more time, and they can't even see it from here. And it just protects the person behind here. It's pretty obvious. I don't really need to explain much here. As you get more playtime with Jaeger, then you're going to start noticing that people are going to waste some of their projectiles, mainly a flashbang or a smoke grenade, to clear your ADSs to try to get nades through. If this happens, then it will be a pretty good idea to try to stack as many ADSs as you can in one area. I say a good bet would be around 2. I overall think Jaeger's gadget is very good, especially if you're a new or advanced player. But he also has a pretty decent loadout as well. Jaeger's 416 is on the weaker side, especially if we're talking about assault rifles, but it does have pretty low recoil with an okay fire rate, so I imagine you won't have too much trouble with it. However, his M870 shotgun is one of the best shotguns in the entire game, with really good damage, solid range, and an insanely fast pump speed. But his P12 handgun is nothing to write home about. It's a pretty average pistol, and, well, it'll get the job done for you. Now, quickly going back to secondary gadgets, which one you should use really depends on what's going on and what strat you have planned. If you are lacking in some information operators, like you're not bringing Valkyrie or Echo, then maybe bringing the bulletproof camera will be a pretty good option. Because one, it's obviously bulletproof, and it does have a secondary EMP device on it, so you can disable any drones that try to come into the site. However, his observation blocker gadget will just completely deny the drone's intel, because it can't see anything, really. So it's up to you on which one you should bring. Jaeger is one of those few operators that you can completely frag out with and help your team at the same time. And any hero shooter, that's exactly what you want in an operator. Lesion is a 2-speed 2 armor that comes with his goo trap mines. Lesion has 8 traps in the round, however, you do not have all 8 of them at the beginning. You need to wait for them to recharge over the course of the round. Or what the actual gadget does is once you deploy one of the gadgets, they will basically become invisible, but not completely, however. The attackers can still see them, but they kinda have to look very carefully. Once the attackers actually step into a goo mine, they can no longer run, and they will make some grunting noises. For every few seconds that the attacker leaves the goo in their foot, they will take a small amount of damage. Whether the attacker is standing or not, they will have to play a decently long animation in order to pull out the ghoul, and they will be making noise of them pulling it out. However, the attacker has to look away from the defender in order to pull it out, giving you a chance to swing them. But you don't always have to play new ghouls. Once the attacker steps into one of them, then it will make a loud noise notification, and then you can play off your goos that way. As a small passive ability that he comes with, Lesion can see the icons of his goos above them if he has line of sight on them. For his secondary gadgets, he does come with the burst-proof camera, which is a pretty good option, but he also does come with the impact grenades, which can be used to set up the site, or help with any holes that you need to make, and personally, I think it just fits his playstyle a little bit more. Now, if we're going to talk about his guns, he does have probably my favorite SMG in the entire game, which is the T5. It has a very good fire rate with pretty good damage and a solid magazine size with pretty low recoil as long as you're running the vertical grip. And he has a shotgun, but we're not going to talk about that one. And unlike Jager, he does come with a pretty good handgun. It does right about 60 damage with a good fire rate. It does have a little bit of a lower magazine size, but I think the damage makes up for it tremendously. I think overall, Lesion is a pretty decent operator, whether you're a veteran player or even a new one. But the only downside to him really is that he costs 10k because he is a DLC operator, and there is no way to unlock him through a challenge, so you'll just have to grind out renown. But let's go ahead and talk about some of the attackers now. A slept-on pick even for ranked players is a Nokk. And for a newer player, she's perfect for you. Her ability is her glove, and once you activate it, you will go completely invisible to any cameras unless you do certain actions. Those can consist of shooting your bullet, reloading, even running, and interacting with certain secondary gadgets like moving through barbed wire. If you do any one of these actions, then what the defenders will see is a glitch effect through the cameras. Now, is a little bit hard to notice, but if the defenders do notice it, then they'll call you out immediately. You'll know if you're doing one of these actions because the glitch effect will go on your screen. Yeah, basically if you do any interactions, you'll see like a glitch effect. I don't know what else to call it, man. It's not all the times that the defenders will go on their cameras. However, when a defender does die, they will likely hop on default cameras, and this is where Nokk can be very good for you. Also, a neat little fact is when a default camera is being affected by your gadget, the camera will turn white. Nokk is also a very good operator if you just kind of want to go solo. And as you get more experience in the game, you will start noticing that people are picking a lot of out. This is strictly because she is a very good operator in ranked specifically. Because she comes with 3 little cameras, and if you have a Nokk on your team, then she basically can't use her gadget at all. You would be one of the strongest counters to Valkyrie, and in my opinion, that is a very huge ability to have. And she has arguably the best secondary gadget on attack right now, that being frag grenades. Now, I have a more in-depth guide to Nokk, and I explain this ability more. But basically, if you try to time your nade correctly, you can properly nade from below and get some free kills. However, if you actually are a new player to the game, then I wouldn't really recommend you try to focus on this ability right now, because I think you should learn other aspects of the game, but as you get more experience, I say if you have at least like 20 hours in the game, then trying to learn nading from below is a very useful tool for you, especially if you want to get free, easy kills. And she also does come with some pretty good guns. Now, she does have the same shotgun as Lesion, but do not run it on Nokk, because number 1, shotguns on attack are pretty bad, and number 2, the FMG-9 is a fast fire rate, good damage, 1.5 building SMG, and it fits her playstyle perfectly. And she does come with the Desert Eagle, which is a high-powered handgun, just like every other game it's featured in. Overall, Nokk is a very good operator, and I'm generally surprised people don't really play her all that much, because she is really slept on. I feel like more people will come around to her, but if you are a newer player, then I 100% recommend you pick her up. The next operator is one that a lot of people like to play, and that is the Heartbreacher Ace. The Heartbreacher is one of the most important operators that you need to bring on your lineup, and Ace is one of the best operators to do that role. For his primary gadget, he comes with 3 of his Selma devices. Once you throw a Selma on a reinforced wall, it will make 1 small hole after a few seconds, and then after that one, it will release another Selma, making another hole, thus leaving you a vaultable or crouchable hole. A lot of people advise that you make crouchable holes because vaulting in this game is kind of a death sentence. Because when you're vaulting, it's harder to turn your camera, and sometimes you just need to turn more right in order to get a kill. If you make it crouchable, then you don't really have to worry about that. A good thing about Ace is that he can completely deny a bandit trick. What that is when the bandit player tries to place down another one of his charges as an exothermic charge or a Selma device goes off. Because of how quickly Ace can throw his Selmas and how quickly they can detonate, it can kind of deny this whole aspect about Bandit. Bandit can still pull it off, but the chances of him doing that with all the commotion going on in a regular round is kind of slim. One thing you have to remember as Ace is that you are one of the more important operators to play, and if you die early on, you could hurt your team a little bit more than you intended to. But this is easy to fix, just be a little bit more cautious and look out for spawn pigs, and you should be fine. One side thing you have to know about Ace as well is that the other auto creatures can successfully open up a reinforced hatch. Thermite only takes 1 of his exothermic charges, and Habana only takes 4 of her X-Kairos. However, Ace needs to use 2 of his Selmas, only leaving him 1 to open up another wall if he wants to. And depending on the side, you're going to need to open up a hatch, so for that, I recommend you bring Habana or a secondary Heartbreach gadget. And despite Ace being intended to be a support operator, he comes with one of the best assault rifles in the entire game, that being an AK-12 with a 1.5 scope. It has really good damage of 40, an RPM of 850, which is a good fire rate, obviously. And it has low recoil, so what else do you want in the gun? And he does come with the P9 handgun, but there's nothing to write home about here. And he does come with the M1014 shotgun, but I don't really need to say anything here because just remember what I said about Nokk. For secondary gadgets, Ace has the option of breaching charges, and this is really good if you just need to open up a soft wall to get line of sight, or to potentially play vertical play in case your buck or sledge dies. He does also get the options of claymores, but I personally see this as a comfort pick because I'm not a huge fan of claymores, but you do come with 2 of them, and if you are getting tired of getting run out on, or you just need to watch a flank and you don't have a flank-specific operator, yada yada, you kind of get the idea of a claymore. Ace is considered to be the best hard breacher in the game right now, and that's mainly because he kind of is. Unfortunately, you can't unlock him through a challenge, but he does cost around 10k to 15k renown. The next operators I'm going to try to skim through. I'm mainly going to be talking about their gadgets and their more popular gun option, because this video has already gone long enough, and I imagine you just want to hop back into the game. Starting with Doc on defense. Doc's primary gadget is his stim pistol, and it's a healing device which, when you stim yourself or a teammate, you'll be healed up to 200 HP, even though the max isn't 200 HP. If Doc's teammates go down, then he can stim them up to full HP, and they'll get back up instantly. And as a bonus, Doc can heal himself when he's down, making him able to self-revive. Doc's popular gun option is his MP5 with low recoil, fast fire rate, lower damage however, but does have a 1.5. However, I don't think you should sleep on his shotgun because it is one of the best in the game, and I think his P90 SMG is also a good option, but the recoil is a little bit more crazy. He does have some pretty good options with the revolver and the P9 handgun. However, I think you should run the bailiff for sight setup. Unless you are already running the primary shotgun, then I recommend you run the P9. You should run the barbed wire on him because it helps to slow down the attacks. It's probably cardinal sin that I didn't talk about Iana in the primary list. However, she is the most popular option on attack right now, and that's because she's a little bit overpowered, so I feel like she's going to get nerfed soon. So take this as you will for now. Iana's main gadget is the Gemini Replicator. This allows Iana to make a clone of herself that cannot shoot and will be countered by any operators that encounters drones or electronics. This is basically a third drone, and you have an unlimited uses of them. Once you deactivate them, it will have a shorter cooldown. However, if it gets destroyed by a defender in any way, then it will have a longer cooldown. People try to use Iana as an entry fragger, and this is not a bad way to play her. However, she does come with the frag grenades, which again are the strongest gadget on attack right now. And you could also try to use the nade from below trick. You could also use it again to try to destroy any piece of defender utility. Her G36C with a 1.5 is a pretty good option. However, I wouldn't really sleep on her Arrow X because it also has low recoil with a lower magazine size, however, but good damage. I think this video has gone on long enough. And if you are a more experienced player, and if you disagree with any of my picks here, then I think you should drop a comment letting some people know which operators you think they should be playing, because I'd like to try to help as many people as I can. But I'm going to go ahead and call it quits there. If you're interested in any other content that I make, then I appreciate it if you try to subscribe or even share my videos, because it does help the channel out a lot. And with all that said, I'm Tony. I hope you have a good day or good night, and goodbye.